Some people are born to shine, and some are born to stand next to the ones who do, quietly, invisibly. That's how it's always been for me. My sister, Lauren, was the golden one, the achiever, the one who made everyone proud. She had a bright smile, perfect grades, a steady job, a picture-perfect life. And then there was me, Sienna, the sick one, the fragile one, the one who tries her best, as people like to say when they didn't know what else to call failure. For most of my life, I've lived in the same house but in a different world. While she ran from one success to another, I moved between hospital visits and days spent counting painkillers. I used to dream of being like her, confident, full of life, free. But dreams are cruel things when your body refuses to keep up. Every morning, I would hear her heels click across the hallway, her perfume lingering as she rushed to work. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, staring at the same four walls, wondering if she ever thought about me at all. Our mother didn't mean to compare us, but she did. Whenever she looked at me, I could see the sadness in her eyes, the kind that says, I wish things were different. And whenever she looked at Lauren, I saw pride. It was a quiet kind of pain, the kind you learn to carry without words. Lauren helped with the bills, the groceries, the house repairs. She reminded me, not cruelly, but constantly, that without her we wouldn't manage. Sometimes I caught her sighing when I asked for help, and I'd tell her never mind, I could handle it. But deep down I knew I couldn't. One evening, as she stood in the kitchen going through mail, she said something that stayed with me. You know, Sienna, sometimes I wonder what you'd do if I wasn't here. Her tone wasn't angry, but it carried a sharpness that cut anyway. I smiled weakly and said nothing. I didn't trust my voice not to break. After that, things changed in small ways. She stopped eating dinner with me, stopped asking how I felt. The warmth in her voice was replaced with impatience, like every word I spoke took something from her. At night, I lay awake listening to the hum of her television through the wall, wondering when exactly I'd turned from a sister into a burden. I tried to make myself smaller, cooking, cleaning, pretending I was fine, pretending I didn't hear her sigh every time she looked at the medical bills, pretending I didn't see the way Mom's eyes darted away from me when Lauren complained. I told myself I didn't need them, that I could live in the quiet, that being invisible was easier than being a disappointment. But deep down, a part of me still hoped that one day, she'd knock on my door not out of obligation, but because she wanted to, that she'd ask, "How are you feeling today?" and actually mean it. I didn't know then that one night, she'd need me more than anyone ever had, and that the same sister who once called me useless would whisper my name through tears, begging me not to let her die. The house had become quieter lately, not in a peaceful way, but in the kind of silence that follows disappointment. Lauren and I barely spoke anymore. We existed like two strangers under one roof, connected only by the shared rhythm of footsteps and closing doors. She worked longer hours now, came home late, and her exhaustion filled every corner of the house. The sound of her keys dropping on the counter, her shoes hitting the floor, it all had the same sharpness, the same unspoken message. I'm tired. Don't make it worse. I tried to stay invisible. I cooked when she wasn't home, cleaned when she was asleep, left notes instead of words. Still, the tension hung heavy, thicker than ever. One night it all broke. It started with something small, a misplaced bill, an envelope on the kitchen table. I had forgotten to send a payment, and when she saw the overdue notice, I could feel the storm building before she even spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was cold. The kind of cold that burns more than it freezes. She said I was careless, that I never thought about how hard she worked, that I just sat here while she carried the world. I stood there, frozen, as her words hit me one by one. They weren't new. I'd heard them before in softer versions, in sighs and looks. But that night, there was no filter, no restraint. And then came the sentence that tore something inside me. You're a burden, Sienna. You always have been. Just 6 words. But they echoed louder than any shout. I didn't cry in front of her. I nodded like I understood, like I agreed, because maybe part of me did. Maybe I had known it all along. She walked away, slamming the door to her room, leaving me in the half-lit kitchen surrounded by silence and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I stood there for a long time, staring at the unpaid bill, at my reflection in the dark window. A burden. The word felt heavy in my chest, pressing down until I could barely breathe. It wasn't anger I felt, it was shame. A deep, hollow shame that wrapped around me like fog, thick and cold. That night, I went to my room and packed a small bag. I didn't know where I would go. I just needed to disappear, even if it was only into another room, another corner of the house where she couldn't see me. The next few days passed in silence. Lauren left early, came home late. She didn't apologize, and I didn't expect her to. Some words can't be taken back. They settle in your bones and become part of who you are. I stopped trying after that. Stopped hoping for softness. Stopped believing that love was unconditional. Still, every time I heard her voice on the phone, laughing with friends, I felt something stir. Not anger, but longing. I wanted to be part of that sound again. I wanted to matter. But the distance between us had already turned into something permanent. And though I didn't know it yet, fate was already waiting, patient and cruel, for the night when everything she said would come back to her in a way she'd never forget. Time has a strange way of softening pain, not by healing it, but by wrapping it in routine until it almost feels normal. Days passed like muted echoes. Lauren and I still shared a house, but not a life. I learned her schedule by sound, the closing of the front door at 7 a.m., the hum of her car fading down the street, the way the hallway light switched off exactly at midnight. We lived like strangers whose lives touched only in the smallest, coldest ways. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Instead, I filled the silence with small things. Books I never finished, tea gone cold. The steady ticking of the clock that reminded me how long the days had become. Sometimes I caught glimpses of her across the kitchen, her eyes sunken, movements slower than before. She still looked perfect to everyone else. Sharp suits, polished hair, flawless posture, but I saw the cracks, the dark circles, the trembling hands, the fatigue she tried to hide under layers of coffee and pride. Once I asked if she was okay. She didn't answer, just muttered that work had been crazy lately. Then she changed the subject and left before I could say more. So I stayed quiet again. Silence had become the safest language between us. Our mother called occasionally, but conversations were short. She still believed Lauren held everything together, that I was lucky to have her. I didn't bother correcting her. The truth was simpler. Lauren carried too much, and I carried the guilt of existing beside her. Then one evening, I found her asleep at the kitchen table. Her laptop open, papers scattered, a glass of untouched water next to her. I hesitated before touching her shoulder, afraid she might wake up angry, but she didn't stir. She looked fragile in a way I'd never seen before, as if the world she built around herself was finally beginning to crumble. She woke up suddenly, startled, and brushed me off with a forced laugh. I just dozed off. I'm fine. But her eyes told another story, red, tired, unfocused. I wanted to say something, but the memory of her last words held me back. You're a burden. So I nodded and left her alone. That night I couldn't sleep. A faint noise came from her room, coughing, then silence. I almost went to check but stopped halfway. I didn't want her to think I was hovering or worse, pitying her. In the following days, the signs became impossible to ignore. She skipped meals. Her hands shook when she poured coffee. Sometimes she'd lean against the counter as if standing had suddenly become too hard. But she never complained. She just smiled tighter, worked harder, and came home later. And then came the storm, sudden, sharp, and cruel. The kind that doesn't knock before it breaks the door open. It was late at night, the world outside soaked in rain. I was half asleep when I heard it. A crash, followed by a sound that didn't belong in the house. A gasp. A choked cry. Then silence. I sat up, heart pounding, the darkness around me heavy and still. Something inside me already knew. This wasn't like before. This time she was the one who needed saving. Rain fell softly against the windows that night, steady and endless. The kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller, quieter, more fragile. I was half asleep, wrapped in a blanket, the sound of the storm lulling me into something between dreaming and waking, when I heard it. Crash. Then silence. It wasn't loud, but it was wrong. A sound that didn't belong. My body reacted before my mind could. I pushed the blanket aside and stepped into the hallway. The air felt heavy, charged. I could smell something sharp, metal, maybe coffee spilled on the floor. Lauren. No answer. Her door was slightly open, light flickering from the lamp on her desk. When I pushed it wider, the scene froze me. She was on the floor, one hand clutching her chest, the other reaching weakly toward the nightstand. Papers scattered around her like snow. Her breathing was shallow, her lips pale. For a second I couldn't move. It was as if my body refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Then everything snapped into focus. I dropped to my knees beside her, shaking her shoulder. "Lauren, can you hear me?" Her eyes flickered open for a second, unfocused, then closed again. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped my phone as I dialed emergency services. My voice cracked as I tried to explain what was happening, words spilling out between gasps of panic. The operator's calm tone was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. "Stay with her. Keep her on her side. Make sure she's breathing." I followed every instruction. My heart raced so fast it hurt. I kept whispering her name, though I wasn't sure she could hear me. Minutes felt like hours. The siren outside was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Paramedics rushed in, professional, focused, moving around me like a storm of hands and voices. I backed into the corner, watching as they worked, attaching wires, lifting her carefully onto the stretcher. One of them asked questions. How long had she been like this? Did she have a history of heart problems? And I realized I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I lived with her, but I didn't know her anymore. When they carried her out, I followed barefoot into the rain. The flashing red lights reflected in every puddle, painting the night in broken color. As the ambulance doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of her, pale still but breathing, and I remembered her words. "You're a burden, Sienna." But tonight the roles had changed. It was me on the ground beside her, my hands keeping her alive. It was me the paramedics thanked for calling in time. When the ambulance disappeared down the road, the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, drenched, rain running down my face, not sure if it was water or tears. Inside the house, everything felt different. The air, the walls, the shadows. The storm had passed, but something far bigger had broken open between us, something that would never go back to what it was before. And as I closed the front door, shivering and alone, one thought echoed in my head like a prayer I never meant to say. Please let her live. Hospitals have a strange kind of silence, the kind that hums just beneath the sound of machines and footsteps. I sat there in that silence for hours, watching the rhythmic blink of the monitor beside her bed. Every steady beep was a reminder that she was still here, alive, breathing. Lauren looked smaller somehow, lying there under the white sheets, her skin pale, her face without makeup or the confidence she always wore like armor. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked human. When the doctors came in, their voices were calm but serious. A stress-induced cardiac episode, they said. Too much work, not enough rest. A warning sign her body had been giving for weeks. Weeks. I thought of all those nights I'd heard her coughing, the empty dinner plates, the trembling hands, the half-finished cups of coffee. She'd been breaking right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it, or maybe I had, but I was too afraid to care after everything she said. They let me stay through the night. I sat in the chair by her bed, the blanket from home wrapped around me, the smell of antiseptic and rain still clinging to my clothes. I didn't cry. I just watched her chest rise and fall, rise and fall. It was the only thing that kept me steady. When morning came, the light through the blinds was soft and cold. Lauren stirred, groaning faintly before opening her eyes. For a moment she looked confused, then scared, until she saw me. "Sienna." Her voice was weak, dry, almost unrecognizable. I nodded. She didn't speak again right away. Her eyes filled before she could stop it. And then, barely above a whisper, she said the words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm sorry." It was quiet, but it hit harder than any of her past words ever had. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice not to break. So I just reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. For a long time we sat like that, no explanations, no rewinding what had been said or done. Just the sound of the machines and the slow, fragile rhythm of two sisters remembering what it felt like to care again. She tried to say more, to explain, to excuse, but I stopped her. It didn't matter anymore. The moment I saw her on that floor, none of it did. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a decision. It's just what's left when love refuses to die. When Mom arrived later that morning, she cried harder than either of us. She hugged Lauren first, then me really hugged me for the first time in what felt like years. I could have lost both of you, she said. And for once I believe she meant it. That evening as I walked out of the hospital, the sun was setting, golden and quiet after the storm. I took a deep breath and felt something shift inside me. The weight I'd carried for years, the shame, the guilt, the feeling of being less. It wasn't gone, but it was lighter. Lauren would recover. We'd both try to. Nothing would ever be the same, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe we were both learning in our own broken ways that love doesn't survive because it's perfect. It survives because it refuses to give up. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like I had a purpose, and maybe that was enough.